guys, GM, how are we doing? How are we feeling today? By show of hands, who owns an NFT? Okay, dope. Who bought an NFT in the last 24 hours? Oh, come on, guys. All right, so thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be talking about loyalty, fans, consumers, community in NFTs with brands. We have Spencer from Anheuser-Busch joining us. You want to give us a little bit about your background, how you got into this, and then we'll go into the conversation.
Absolutely, and also thank you to the Consensus team for hosting us. Very excited to be here. I'm Spencer Gordon. I lead what's called Consumer Connections and our Draftline team at Anheuser-Busch. So Consumer Connections is basically all of our media, sponsorship, experiential, entertainment, digital, blockchain, and then our in-house creative agency called Draftline. So pretty fun job, fun to do it in the beer industry. I've been with Anheuser-Busch for the last 10 years, kind of hopping around all different roles and experiences. And to me, that was actually a very big proof point and like an unlock for me as NFTs kind of came to life. And I think for me, the way I got into it, we were talking about this ahead of the call, yeah. But one of my friends called me. He was big in the NBA Top Shot. He made a ton of money. This is like on a personal level. And he was like, you should check out NFTs. And I was like, okay, like you're selling videos, what are you doing? But then I really started seeing how the NBA was using this to extend their brand and reach new consumers. And at that time, you know, there's a lot of people that work in our company. We're an international company. And it kind of started this conversation. And I think for me, it got us interested, it got me interested, started buying my first ones.
That's right.
And here we are today.
Oh, I love everything about that. How many of you got into NFTs through NBA Top Shot? Well, that was a gateway drug for sure. That's really amazing. So you've had this amazing kind of presence in the marketplace, everything from Tom Sachs to your own projects with NFTs, with Next, with the beers. But before we get into those projects, I'd love for you to help us understand how you define the difference between a consumer, a fan, and a community member.
So I think a lot of us buy a lot of products. We're all consumers in different ways. And sometimes you're a consumer when you just don't have choices. You're at an airport, you need to get a water bottle, you just pick the water bottle that's there, right? Or you have a certain brand because you're cold, you need an umbrella, it's raining, whatever that is. I think you're seeing an evolution of what's happening with brands and with advertising and with marketing in general. And I think NFTs are a big part of that. So for me, I would say we look at a consumer as someone who's purchasing our product. We have a lot of consumers, right? We have a lot of the world's biggest beers. We are international. We have, you know, multi-billion-dollar brands. And so for me, a consumer is someone who is having you, trying you, buying you, et cetera. And it's how we would typically think of, you know, a person that holds our brands. To me, a fan is like a higher level form of a consumer. That's the person that might be buying it, showing up, opting into the brand when they can. So like, let's say that they have 10 different choices. They're going to pick you. They're going to talk about you with their friends. They're going to be the six-pack they show up with at the pregame. And then for me, a community is really the next form of that. It's your kind of brand evangelist. It's the people that are going to advocate on behalf of the brand. There's the people who are going to wear the Budweiser t-shirt or the Budweiser hat or buy the Budweiser NFT and display it in their digital wallet. And to me, what I love about community is you can find like-minded people in that community. And you can have a two-way dialogue with people in that community. And I think with Metaverse and with NFTs and with blockchain, as a brand, we can take that to the next level. And I think the same evolution that you're talking about with consumers to fandom to community is kind of what's happened with the internet. If we look at phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of web, right, where it was like talking at people or information that's there, not as many choices that you can go and have, to then having social media where you can like things, you can engage with things, you can have that sense, to now community where you can own things with other people and you can vote with other people and you can really experience it with another. So I think we're looking at it in the same way.
That's a really interesting perspective where you spoke about engagement with your community. What does NFTs provide you in terms of utility and access that, you know, Anheuser-Busch is a multi-billion-dollar company. You guys have extensive marketing budgets. You know, like you guys are sponsoring Super Bowls, teams, things of that nature. So cash is not necessarily an issue here. But what does NFTs allow you to do that any other medium hasn't allowed you to do it?
It's a really good question. I think for me, we are one of the world's largest advertisers, sponsors, media spenders, et cetera. And I think for me, what an NFT is allowing you to do is democratize a brand. You can have someone buy something or have ownership, or you can give it to them. And with that, with token gating, with smart contracting, with digital contracts, you can have utility that you associate it with. So for me, instead of having just tickets that we might give away to random fans in a sweepstakes or a consumer contest, we can give it away to people who really want to be part of the brand, who are opting in for that. We can actually use the access that we have, our platforms, to really connect and take things to the next level. So like we are a sponsor of Super Bowl. That's a difficult ticket to get, right? We have a ton of relationships with celebrities and talent. Well, they're hard people to go and meet. I think for me as an NFT, you're basically taking something that, it could be a picture, it could be a collectible, but it could also be a ticket. It could also be access. And I think what you're basically doing is, one, you're putting a liquid market on any asset that you have as a company, just by having it, right? It's something that you can easily transact and you can sell. Two, you can have a direct relationship with your customer. For us as a beer company, we actually operate in what's called a 3-tier system. So we, as a brewer, sell to a wholesaler, who sells to a retailer, who sells to the consumer. Well, it's difficult to have that direct relationship and that two-way dialogue in that situation. We're not a direct-to-consumer company, but now we are. Because with NFTs, you can have collectibles and access that you're able to go and sell. And I think the last thing is, like, there's a lot of different programming and a lot of different partnerships that you can do that you can start to extend on with, new form of variable compensation, new form of partnership. And to me, we're rethinking now everything that we do to start making this a bigger and bigger push in the rest of kind of our marketing plans.
I love the way you're thinking about this. And before we go into what is coming up, I have a very important question. How did you convince a legacy brand, corporate as it gets, to A, adopt NFTs, B, adopt ETH, because that's going to be on your balance sheet, right? And then C, how did you do it so fast? Because you went from being introduced to NBA Top Shot in March to then launching some of the most successful brand collaborations in this space. I would have loved to be a fly on that wall.
It's a really interesting thing because I think the conversation started, and we have a very good relationship with the NBA, right? We partner with a lot of the teams, with the league. And I think so people knew what was happening just because of the relationship. But a lot of conversations started happening because our team is really invested in culture and what's happening and what are consumers talking about. And you're seeing in social listening and analytics, like people, this conversation, there's momentum, there's trends that are picking up. And so there was a few different parts of our organization that started talking about it. And I think for me, our global CEO, who was formerly our zone president, his son actually was really big into NFTs as well. So he was an early, really into the trends and kind of what was going on. And we pursued a few different routes, and I think when we were originally thinking about it, we were looking at it more from a financial perspective, saying, wow, the NBA made all this money licensing their IP. But then I think what we realized is that's not the right angle in for a corporation like us. We can actually use this to extend into community, to build our programs, to start to get in touch with different types of consumers. And so to me, the evolution happened kind of I would say a slow roll to start. But then I think what we found out was there were just so many hurdles. I mean, it was really, really difficult to convince our legal team, our corporate affairs team, our finance team, PR team, sustainability team to kind of get into this. And it was kind of a journey. So I basically put together a cross-functional team. The cross-functional team had members from every single department. And we basically went through meeting after meeting after meeting where we were whiteboarding and sessioning out what are all the risks, what are all the obstacles, what are all the things that we don't think we can accomplish and get done that we can help with. We found partners in the industry that we could help move things along with. One of the most helpful ones was Gary Vaynerchuk and Vayner NFT. So for anyone who knows them, they've done a lot in this space. They really helped onboard us and educate us to a lot that was going on. We started partnering with some of the best partners in the industry in terms of the infrastructure and the web build and data security, et cetera. We started building out our own internal team. And most importantly, we started systematically tackling all those various obstacles that we kind of went through department by department. And what I realized was if we bring them along with the journey and we are very transparent with how we can go and adopt it and we hold hands kind of going in, there's a lot that you can accomplish with communication, collaboration, but most importantly, education. People had no idea what I was talking about, right? And you start to see a lot of the headlines in the industry about there's fraud and there's money laundering and there's digital cartoons. And it was a lot of like, hey, I understand this is how you're viewing it. This is a reality in this space. But this is not how we're going to conduct ourselves in this space. What we are viewing this is, it's like the 1998, 1999 internet scene, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you could say, oh, it's a bubble, things are going to collapse. There's a lot of people coming into the market that aren't there. Or you can look at it and saying, man, Amazon was birthed out of that. Budweiser.com was birthed out of that. Like we needed our own domains. Like we're looking at it the same way. We need to invest in the future. We need to push for innovation. And I think what we started doing was like basically working through every obstacle. And as we started having tests, we were piloting, partnering with others, kind of slowly treading into the water until finally we felt comfortable, just boom, dive right in head first. And I think success breeds success. You have a little bit of momentum, that helps unlock the next thing. You have a little bit more momentum, it unlocks the next thing. And now I think our global company is well behind this. We're firing on our cylinders. You're seeing some of the work across our brands, but we've done drops for Bud Light and Bud Light Next, Budweiser. We've done Budweiser global drops, Budweiser US drops. We've done a drop for one of our Goose Island brands, Goose Island. We have a Bourbon County Stout with this really exclusive beer that you can wait in line for all day, that you could get the NFT and get access to buy that. We've had partnerships with Zedrun and Tom Sachs. And I think for me, that's just the start of it, right? We have a lot up and coming.
So what I'm hearing from you, that it's not necessarily fuck it, ship it, right? Like you kind of went through an actual diligent process, right? And I love that you mentioned education. I think education for brands and for communities and for fans is really important from that capacity. When we think about looking towards the future, what is Anheuser-Busch's mission to contribute to the space beyond, access and things of that nature? Are you guys going to be doing investments? Are you guys going to be expanding the purview?
The answer to that question is yes. I think for me, the way that I look at it is, at the end of the day, we are a brand. We are an advertiser. My end game is to sell more of our products, right? To me, I look at NFTs and I look at media channels like Super Bowl or sponsorships like what we might do with the New York Rangers, something along those lines. It's like very similar things where you're trying to build community, you're trying to build brand evangelists, you're trying to build fandom, and use that to convert them into something else. So for me, NFTs are a mechanism to extend our marketing vehicles, right? We're looking at it as a way that we can have a better two-way dialogue with consumers and that we can bring them into the brands. The end game is not NFTs in itself. It's all of the physical items that we as a company can go and bring to life that we can add and unlock. Now, I think because we're one of the first movers in the space, we are looking to make some strategic investments in things because I think we're seeing a quick return on those investments, the same way that we've done with our digital advertising and other elements that have come to life. So I think to me that's big. But ultimately, we don't want to look and we don't want to be perceived even by consumers as coming into the space to ruin the space, right? When you look at Web3 and you look at decentralization and you look at cryptocurrency and blockchain, a lot of that is intended because consumers don't like, or the people who started it don't really love institutions. We're a major institution worldwide, right? We're one of the biggest institutions worldwide. So when I look at that, it's like we need to make sure that people are excited about us coming there. They want to pick our brands. They want to show our brands and bring it to life. And I think for me, the number one thing there is understanding what people are, why they're there. What do they want? Well, how can we contribute? What value can we bring that other partners and other brands and other companies can't? And I think that took a lot of, we're not done. It's an evolution. It's testing and learning. It's getting receptive. It's having Discord channels and hearing what consumers are saying. But I also think it's an appetite for risk that you have to be comfortable with. And I think luckily we are.
Yeah, that appetite for risk is really very clearly. I wanted to transition over to more of your personal perspective on NFTs. And is there any community or project that stands out to you that you want to learn from or that you learned from, or there's like, oh, there's this mechanic from this community that I'd love to implement, or there's this smart contract thing? What are some of the communities that you're paying attention to, and what are some of your favorite community engagement tactics that you've seen play out?
It's a great question. I think for me, I have a lot of different interests, and I try and find different passion points and different projects that I can personally be a part of because I'm interested in those things. I love observing a lot of the corporate ones, just knowing that that's kind of the realm that I'm coming in from. So it's interesting to see kind of what bigger institutions to me, like, again, I mentioned the NBA Top Shot, but it's fascinating to have a brand innovate in that way and come with such scale. So to me, that got me interested in the space, and I'm pretty active in that community. But what I would say is I love what Adam Bomb Squad is doing, right? Bobby Hundreds, and then you see like, to me, that was the first one that I was part of where I was, you know, you have a digital element that's connected to a physical element where you're able to then see, okay, like I can get merchandise and I can be part of a community and there's amazing crew of people in the Discord channel that I can connect with and talk to. To me, that is like one of my favorite ones and one of the earlier ones, in my opinion, that I think that did really well. I'm really big into some of the ones that are happening around, like, you know, see Women Rise, you see Flower Girls.
Yeah.
To me, those are two that are really, really strong artwork that I love. But I think that it's also a passionate group of people that want to support women and want to support artwork in the community and upcoming creators. Those are two that I really like as well.
That's really awesome. And we'll give some time for audience questions in a little bit, but what do you think is going to be the tipping point for brands to really take on NFTs, not as a marketing expenditure, because a lot of times things fall under the marketing budget? When do you think NFTs or Web3 are going to have their own department within Anheuser, and then overall in general with big brands?
I think it'll depend a little bit on what's the company or the brand that's behind it. You know, all different corporations have different setups. For us, we have like a technology team. We also have a digital marketing team that I would lead. I think it depends on how you're going to use your NFTs and what your end game is for them. Like, what's the job to be one of metaverse and NFTs and blockchain? I look at it as saying we want to incorporate this as one of the many ways that you can get in touch with the brand because we have such powerful brands. I think for other companies, it might be more of a financial, it might be a different revenue source and how you diversify your product. And I could see that going one way. I could see it as being, how do you set up all of your digital products and all of your technology? I could see it just being, we want an innovation team, and we're just going to innovate and do different realms. So I think it could come to life in different ways. I think for us, we actually started looking at this in a lot of different departments, and like we were discussing, where do we put this team? Is it its own team? Does it sit on one of our zones or one of our country's P&L? Is it independent? Where do we structure it? And I think what we found out is like it's really helpful to have people from across the business in one central place, because everyone brings all different areas of expertise. And if you're a corporation and you have multiple brands, you don't want multiple people speaking in a complex space on behalf of all those brands. You need to have one decision maker, you need to have one strategy, you need to have one realm, because the difference between blockchain and NFTs and a lot of what we do in the rest of our marketing channels is these live forever. They live forever because you're selling a part of your brand to a consumer, and once you do that, you're gifting them that, and that's it. So you have to have an appetite and someone that's really signing off to be like, I'm comfortable with this living out there in the ether forever. So I think for me, it'll depend on the brand and the initiative. For us, we've centralized it, found that to be very helpful. I think at some point we will decentralize it again, just like we did with some of our, but it might be centered on brand teams. It might be centered in specific countries instead of one global function that we can go and do. And it might be its own thing outside of marketing, outside of tech, where it's just, boom, this is the future, so we're going to treat it like an innovation team.
That's really awesome. And when you're thinking about innovation teams, you have to address different consumers in different ways. Like, I feel like Anheuser has pretty much the gambit of the spectrum on audience, right? Like, you don't speak to a single audience. You're not like millennials, 18 to 25, that's it. Like, you speak to the farmer in Iowa who just wants to have some Bud Light, all the way to, you know, Tom Brady who wants to have a beer after winning the Super Bowl, right? Like, you speak to two just opposing audiences. Is there a strategy where you'd like to onboard the farmer as much as you'd like to onboard the celebrity?
100%. I think for me, we're in the infant stages of this community, in this area, in this space. I think our brands are in a very mature phase, right? You've probably heard of a lot of our biggest brands. You've heard of Stella Artois, you've heard of Natural Light, you've heard of Bud Light. There's a lot of craft brands and smaller brands and what we call ready to drink, which are small spirits and seltzers that you probably haven't heard of that we're scaling and bringing to life. At the end of the day, I think the alcohol industry is pretty mature. I think what I look at when I look at the space is, okay, let's say, and I don't know the exact number here, but there's 5% of consumers in the US that might own and have an NFT and be really ingrained. That still means that there's still 95% of the consumer base that's coming into the space. So we want to welcome them in. We want to be there before other people. We're betting that this is going to be a long-term growth, and that if we can get our early fair share of mind, that we're going to benefit later on when people who are not there are there. I think the second thing I would say is, because it's a small space, we have to be very careful with which brands we jump in with, which passion points or which interests or things that we're doing in the space, so we're not all doing the same thing. Like, I don't want Budweiser and Bud Light and Stella Artois and Natty Light and Busch Light all to target the same consumer. I want to spread them out because the brands stand for different things in real life. There's all different price points, all different points of distribution, different packaging, and we don't want to overlap, because if we overlap, we cannibalize, and then we also hurt ourselves in the offline world. So for me, when we approached it, we really were saying, okay, let's map kind of this emerging area. What are sports programs that are there? What are entertainment programs that are there? What are up-and-coming cool like artists and creators that are there? What are sustainability projects or kind of corporate consumer responsibility that's there that we can go into? And then we started lining up our brands and mimicking our strategy from the what I would call the physical world to the digital world. So when we're looking and we're saying, okay, we really want Bud Light to go into gaming and esports, it's like, great, that's also what we're doing with our Bud Light brand. And then for me, when you start to do that, we have very clear swim lanes for our brands to operate in, which means we're reaching different people within this space, but then also as more people pour in and they find the projects that they want to be a part of, the brands look the same, online and offline.
That's really interesting. I love that concept of keeping each brand tailored specifically to a different messaging, a community, and a different communication strategy. That's really, really powerful. I have a question for the audience. How many of you would like to get some sponsored dollars from Busch, Anheuser-Busch? Yeah, right? I think your investors will really like that revenue model, right? For brands that would like to work with Anheuser-Busch, what do you guys look for? What is it that is a clear yes? What's a no-no? And what are some of the best practices that you've seen to create that not only consumer loyalty, but there's brand loyalty within the Web3 space, right? Like partnerships, development, things of that nature, and associating yourself with the right company or the right brand can make or break your entry point to Web3. So what would you say to brands that would like to work with you, and what are the best practices to do so?
I'll take one step back and I'll say, I think it really depends on the life stage and where you are in the model. When we were starting in the space, we were looking for other brands to be like, how do we enter cautiously and make sure that we're going to be received well? And let's find partners in the space that are credible, that have worked really well, that have a really bought in and engaged audience. This is how we found Tom Sachs. This is how we found Nouns DAO. This is how we partner with a lot of the partners that we've been doing. And then using that, now I do think we are credible in the space. When we go and do something, I think we have an avid group of fans. We're received well. People know that we're serious about it. So I think for me, part one is really making sure like you know where you are in the process. And I would say not every brand should enter the space right now. Not every brand should do this. Brands that are comfortable having their assets for the next 100 years in the space, that have brands that stand for something meaningful, that are going to withstand the test of time, those are the ones to me that start to make a little bit more sense that come in. I think when they come in, it has to be very clear of why you're coming in, and that you're not just here as a cash grab or a rug pull and trying to gain an instant buck. Because to me, again, your brand is going to be around in 100 years. Is that the way is it worth it for the short term? The answer is no, right? Then I think for all of the people in the room who come from like more of the Web3 space that are not like the traditional brands that might exist, I would say like, number one, I wouldn't say sponsorship anymore. I think those days are actually not it's not the right terminology for this. It's partnership, where we actually have an environment where now we can like share in a revenue share. We can have compensation that's tied together. We can build together. And I think for me, that is really key in this area. It's kind of what I was describing where I said like there's like a liquid market now for basically anything. And this allows it to go and happen. So I think that's really big. And I also think, what do you do really well? And what do we do really well? Right? So I think like we are the best brewer in the world. We are unbelievable at distribution. We have some of the most iconic brands. We can use help in some of these native experiences. We want to be dynamic. We need token gating. We want to be thoughtful about our smart contracting. I think we build a lot of the acumen, but the space is changing so quickly. So really, what can you bring to the table? What can we bring to the table? And how do we build it together for the long term?
You hit the nail on the head on that front. And it's like weeks or months, months or years, and years or decades in the NFT world, you know, Web3. I'm going to open up the stage for the audience. If anybody wants to ask a question. The microphone is right over here. Does anybody have any questions? Because we have 5 more minutes. If not, we can continue the conversation.
For someone who doesn't understand or doesn't believe in NFTs, how would you explain it to them in a way they can understand and in a way that they favor NFTs?
I'll tackle this one because, as you guys know, I'm the co-founder and president of NFT Now. We are the #1 trusted source for NFT curation, content, and analysis. We're also building Web3 operating system for media companies, infrastructure, technology. From that standpoint, you kind of have to really. We have a formula within NFT Now that we like to call it this way. What people don't understand, they fear, and what they fear, they reject, right? And that's very clear. So if we can actually go back and help them understand it in layman's terms, that really desynthesizes the overwhelm of crypto. What do you mean I have to buy ETH? Where do I buy ETH? What do you mean a MetaMask? What's a seed phrase? What do you mean if I lose this, I'm done? Like, what do you mean? Like, what is open seed? Like all these questions just to buy a single NFT, you have to go through, I think, 10 or 11 steps, right? Like, it's not necessarily a plug and play process. So what I would suggest to someone who doesn't know about NFTs that wants to go to NFTs, I would say go to nftnow.com. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. We have a lot of guides that are really tailored for on-ramping the consumer, right? It's very much tailoring it to layman's terms, right? We really make sure to break it down. We have an excellent piece called NFT 101, the ultimate guide. It's about 7,500 words. We spent about 3-4 months putting that together so that it actually step-by-step guide. Listening to our podcast, researching, right? Listening. I can't tell you how some of the most successful people in NFTs, both from a celebrity standpoint and individuals or anons, they just listened for a little bit. They just sat there in the marketplaces, they sat there in Clubhouse, they sat there on Twitter Spaces. I didn't know shit about NFTs 2 years ago, guys. Like 18 months ago, you could have walked into me and said NFT, and I was like, what? No, but we created NFT Now because we had that problem, right? So we were having that. But it's also about really curiosity and understanding that NFTs, even though they are young, I can't wait for the future where we see NFTs the same way we look at credit card technology. Like, no one's asking you about what is the process behind that. I think NFTs are going to be such an everyday life aspect that the word NFT is not even going to exist anymore, right? So I very, very much welcome you guys to read NFT Now and just go into that content.
Hi. So this is a question about NFT strategy for brands. So now brands are mainly using Ethereum or Polygon, and as we are not now at the time where basically all these kind of chain, they are interoperable, and that's probably where we are going. Should brand look to kind of do different drop on different chain? Is that something that you think is a good strategy for one of those big brands? Or how would you tackle interoperability? So that's one question. The other question is about traceability of supply chain. So maybe it's not so much about NFTs, more about blockchain integration in kind of like for brand, basically, operation.
Yeah, sure. The first question, I think it's absolutely essential that brands try all different chains and all different strategies and all different drops and price points, right? I think for me, the space is moving so quickly, I would never put all my eggs in one basket. That's just my opinion, right? I think like it's helpful. I also think when you think about what's the price point that you're thinking about a consumer entering in, some consumers are willing to pay $1,000. Some are not, right? Sometimes you go to if you're buying on ETH and you're going to OpenSea, it's a clunky experience for a consumer. It's not the best experience by comparison to going to Amazon and having a one button checkout, right? So I think for me, it's important to think about how you're onboarding those people. When we were coming with our own launch, I was adamant that we need to have a credit card option. We take ETH, we take Bitcoin, we also take credit card. Well, credit card, a ton of our fans were first-time buyers. We made it really easy for them to onboard and come in. And so ETH was where the NFT was on, but the transaction itself was not, and I think that helped a lot of people that came through. I think now we're also venturing into a lot of other ones because some are more efficient from a sustainability perspective than others. Some have totally lower price points. Some we can give to consumers for free and there's no gas fees. And also, like, there's all different platforms and partners and marketplaces, and I think it's important to bring it to life. And then to your last question about like blockchain and the use, I think there are a ton of use cases. I think for us, we're looking at this is the first way in, but there's a lot more to come. And I think this goes back to Alejandro's question of like, where does the team sit? Is it a marketing venture, or is it a technology team, or is it an innovation team? And I think that's something we're exploring, because I absolutely believe that the blockchain, that the decentralized digital ledger will be very, very effective for us as we think about the broader supply chain as a company. Good question.
That's really great, guys. Thank you so much. We're wrapping up on time, but Spencer, where can people find you? And is it online, like Twitter, Instagram? What is it?
Twitter, LinkedIn, I would say for me personally. Also, you know, any of our websites. If you're interested in our products, Budweiser.com, BudLight.com, and any other brand pages.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
And enjoy
Thank you.
Consensus.